you almost think these stories aren't going to happen. I read this story once, and then I reread it because I thought I must have missed something. How does it happen that a 62-year-old man named Ejaz Choudry, who's a father of 4 children, who is alone in his apartment in the suburbs of Toronto, at 8 p.m., on a very bright night, so 8 p.m., not in the winter, it's not dark, no mistaking who's what, lights are on, everything's clear, visibility's good, who has a wellness check because he's got a well-known history, his family's been open about his mental health issues, and he's clearly having an episode. I don't know how to medically characterize it properly in a way that is accurate. Some have talked to me and they said, oh, it's like a psychotic episode. I don't know the term, but he's clearly having a medical episode because he has a mental health condition, schizophrenia. And officers come. Apparently they could communicate with them through the door, so it's not like they didn't know what was happening. But apparently he had a knife, but he was alone. It's not like someone was under threat. And how do a number of officers then breach the balcony, come in, first use non-lethal weapons, like a taser? If that doesn't work, they just kill him. They don't shoot him once. We don't know how many times, 3, 4, 5. Apparently there's a video. Mr. Choudry's nephew says that the officers kicked the door down and said, drop it. And then they shot him. Now, the first person I thought of here is, outside of the family, was Yusuf Fakiri. Why? Because in 2016, his brother Solomon Fakiri also had a mental health condition, was put in custody at the Central East Correctional Center in Lindsay, Ontario, and 11 days later he was dead. A video also emerged. It's shockingly similar to the George Floyd video in the sense that he was pinned down and he died. Yusuf is his brother. Since that day, Yusuf has asked for justice. And how our frontline officials, whether in our correctional facilities, our prisons, or the streets, are treating people. So I called Yusuf this morning. I contacted him, as I often do, and I asked him if he could speak about this. And after the George Floyd situation, it was just hard for Yusuf to even... It brought back everything about Solly, his brother. But Yusuf has been good enough to come back, because this is what his life has now turned to, advocating for better treatment. And Yusuf joins me now. Yusuf, probably a hard day, a Father's Day yesterday, a hard day for your family, I imagine. How are you, sir?
I'm okay, Evan, and thank you for having me.
What was your reaction when you heard about Mr. Choudry?
Evan, I started crying. First thing I did was I reached out to some people in the community to be able to assist the family, and I couldn't sleep. I was having a great day on Saturday, and when I found out, I couldn't sleep, and my mom and I cried together. And I went into action yesterday, and I went to the rally for Mr. Choudry. It brought some very difficult memories, Evan.
I bet it did. Tell me, there's a lot of similarities between how Mr. Choudry was dealt with and your brother.
Yeah, so let's talk about the facts here, Evan. Why, this man, as you know, he was a father of 4. His youngest child, Evan, let me be clear, was 7 years old.
Yeah.
7 years old, Evan. Why don't we use de-escalation tactics with people that are mentally, are suffering from mental illness? Why use lethal use of force? Why kill the man when he needs compassion? Why not offer him, an alternative, Evan? I mean, and my understanding is the facts of the case, the family wanted to help in that situation, but they never let him speak to his family during that situation. Never did.
Here's a guy who the family knew he was barricaded inside, right? They knew. This was not like a sudden thing. They knew that he was having some kind of mental health crisis. He needed medication. This was a wellness check. I mean, it's not, they could have been prepared. Let's walk through. What do you think should have happened there, sir?
Evan, this needs to stop. What should have happened is Mr. Choudry, like you said, should have spent Father's Day yesterday with his family. What should have happened, Evan, is to help him, Evan, not react, not kill him. Why are we still having the same conversation, Evan, after more than 3.5 years? What does this say about our nation as a society, the way we treat people with mental illness? And I've said this to you before, Evan. It's as if people with mental illness, their lives are viewed as cheap, sir. There's so many cases, Evan, that you've spoken about. And 3.5 years later, after Suleiman's death, here you have another death. 3.5 years later, we're asking for justice, Evan. We still have not received justice. There still hasn't been transparency into his death. And you look at Mr. Choudry's tragedy, which is so difficult to bear. Where is the justice, Evan? Where is the transparency? Where is the accountability?
Where's the justice for Solly right now? You and I have been talking about your brother for 3.5, almost 4 years. You've been fighting for justice. I just want people to know, if people think this is going to be resolved clearly, any justice for Solly?
Evan, we put our best efforts forward. Canadians are listening, and we are trying our best. But Evan, sir, the case has now been 18 months with the OPP. This is the second police investigation. We don't know what's happening, Evan. 3.5 years, sir. 50 bruises, Evan. Legs and hands tied, pepper spray twice. Segregation, suffering from mental illness. And most of the guards that were involved in his killing, Evan, worked for the Ontario government. One of the guards have been reinstated. What does this say about our society, sir? When we have people that suffer from mental illness are given to their families in body bags, and the people that are the custodian of the state, that are the vanguards of the state of our society, we have a rich civic society in Canada, a proud history, but why don't we hold these individuals that hold a certain level of power into account? My brother, Evan, had a story to tell, and I'm so grateful to always tell his story on your show. But the reason we're fighting is so we could have prevented a tragedy like Mr. Choudry. But it seems like it's going to continue, because if we don't say enough is enough, this will continue, Evan.
When I saw the George Floyd video, and you know the video about your brother, even that kind of use of force, it almost was, it was hard for me to not see the parallels there.
Evan, I did not, I made the mistake of watching the George Floyd video, and it traumatized me after, because according to the eyewitness, one of the guards had his knee on Suleiman's neck.
I know.
And this is while he's cuffed, Evan. This is while he's suffering from schizophrenia.
Yeah. And then...
Now go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead, sir.
And then, Evan, the problem, again, and I don't want to go back to this, Evan, why does the pursuit of justice have to be so elusive in our society? Why do we have to have this conversation 3.5 years later, Evan? My brother's death was not an accident. My brother didn't just roll over and die. He was given to my mom in a body bag. And now, look, we are in June 2020, Evan. He was dead in December 2016. We're nowhere close. We are nowhere to wanting to get justice for my late brother. And here we have this tragedy with Mr. Choudry, sir.
Let me ask you, and this is a hard question because I don't know, and I've only got a minute. Race, Muslim men. Do you think that's a factor?
Evan, I don't know all the facts in the case. I certainly hope not. As a nation, I do know as a nation, Evan, we have to say enough is enough with people with mental illness, with the criminalization of people with mental illness. And if we don't say enough is enough, Evan, if we do not do anything, there will be more Justin Saint-Amours, more Ejaz Choudrys, more Suleiman Fakiris, and more Ashley Smith. We as a nation have work to do, Evan, and this will leave a very horrible impact for generations to come, Evan, if we do not stop this mess, sir.
Yusuf Fakiri has become one of the most passionate and important speakers for people, on behalf of his brother, but on behalf of many brothers. Yusuf Fakiri, our conversation will not end. All my love to your family. Thank you, sir.
To you as well, sir. Thank you, Evan.